นะครับออสเตรเลียญี่ปุ่นนะครับโอเคริวครับช่วยเรคคอร์ดอัดไว้ด้วยนะครับนะฮะแล้วก็ไลฟ์ thank you ขอบคุณมากครับแล้วก็งานนี้มีไลฟ์ on Facebook ด้วยนะครับอาจารย์ต้นนะครับ
ครับผม
ครับ
ได้แจ้ง
เพราะฉะนั้นถ้าเกิดไม่ได้ดูวันนี้ตามไปดูวันหลังก็ได้ไม่ได้ยินเสียงครับอาจารย์อาจารย์ต้นเทสเสียงหน่อยครับ
ได้ยิน
มันขาดไม่ได้ยิน
ถ้าอย่างนั้นผมไม่ใช้เฮดโฟนดีไหมครับ
อันนี้ปกติครับได้ยินปกติเสียงชัดด้วยครับ
ถ้างั้นไม่ใช้เฮดโฟนดีกว่า
โอเค
ผมคิดว่าเดี๋ยวทางทีมงานจะสวิชไปให้หลังจากที่อาจารย์วีรวัฒน์พูดแล้วผมพูดใช่ไหมครับอาจารย์วีรวัฒน์จะ
เดี๋ยวผมอาจจะ introduce แนะนำโครงการอาร์เคดสักหน่อยนะครับและอาจจะส่วนตัว artist ให้อาจารย์แนะนำแล้วกันนะครับแล้วผมคงใช้เวลาสัก2 นาทีแล้วกันก็จะได้ขอบคุณผู้เข้าร่วมจากหลายๆประเทศด้วยแล้วก็ส่งต่อให้อาจารย์เปิด sections นะครับ
โอเคครับผมก็จะขอบคุณทางออสเตรเลียที่เป็นคนใส่โปรแกรมนี้เข้าไปทำให้เรากลายเป็นโปรแกรมที่เป็นโปรแกรมที่ถูกบรรจุอยู่เป็นส่วนหนึ่งของโปรแกรมนานาชาติของเขา
ครับพอดีปีนี้ปลายปีนี้ทาง UITM มาเลเซียเขาจัดงานอาคาเดซ่าด้วยครับนะฮะแล้วก็ปีหน้าเนี่ยเขาก็จะส่งมอบให้เราเป็นเจ้าภาพต่อไปก็ชนกับอาร์เคดปี2022พอดีนะฮะ
ครับ
ก็เดี๋ยวเข้าใจว่า
มีโครงการต่อเนื่องใช่ไหมครับ
ใช่ฮะก็ถือว่าถ้าครั้งหน้าเราจัดอาร์เคด2022หรือ slash Arcadesa ด้วยก็จะถือว่าเป็นครั้งที่6นะฮะ the sixth นะ International Symposium on Art Craft and Design นะฮะ
ครับก็สำหรับนักศึกษาที่เข้ามาแล้วผมขอต้อนรับนะครับแล้วก็พูดให้ฟังสั้นๆนิดเดียวเท่านั้นเองก็คือว่าศิลปินที่เราเชิญมาวันนี้เป็นศิลปินที่คร่ำวอร์ดอยู่ในวงการแก้วมานานกว่า40 ปีแล้วก็เป็นศิลปินที่เคยมาเมืองไทยมาอบรมมาทั้งกรุงเทพเชียงใหม่ได้เป็นผู้เรียกว่าปลุกกระแสศิลปะแก้วในประเทศไทยขึ้นมา1 คนแล้วก็เอาเนื้อหาที่อยู่ในประเทศไทยศิลปินที่ทำงานแล้วก็โอกาสของประเทศไทยไปพูดในเวทีนานาชาติที่การประชุมสมาคมแก้วนานาชาติที่เวนิสมาแล้วนะครับเมื่อปี2019นะครับแล้วก็เป็นโอกาสที่จะทำให้ประเทศไทยเนี่ยได้มีโอกาสได้เข้าไปเป็นส่วนหนึ่งนะครับเทคนิคที่ศิลปินคนนี้ใช้เนี่ยก็จะมีความน่าสนใจแล้วก็เอามาปรับใช้ได้ครับเดี๋ยวรอให้ถึงเวลาแล้วอาจารย์วีรวัฒน์จะเริ่มนะครับ
อีกสัก15 นาทีนะฮะเราเริ่มตามเวลานะฮะส่วนการบรรยายจะเป็นภาษาอังกฤษล้วน
ครับเพราะว่าวันนี้แขกของเรา
นะครับ
ท ที่เห็นมีจากนานาชาตินะครับมาจากอังกฤษมาจากออสเตรเลียส่วนนักศึกษาไม่ต้องกังวลนะครับเดี๋ยวผมจะไปสรุปให้ในชั้นเรียนอีกครั้งหนึ่ง
How do you say International Year of Glass in Thai? คนไทย
ปีสากลแห่งแก้วปี
B
สากล
สากล
แห่งแก้ว
แคนกาว
แห่งแก้วแห่งแก้ว
แคนแก้ว
yes
Very impressive.
Oh.
Yes, Stephanie.
I must say this program is also Savanya is a part of the organizer. Without her, it is quite difficult to form everything. She will come soon. She will come.
Oh, wonderful.
Soon. So she will. You will see him. You will see her.
What about Araya? Will she be here?
Sure. She know that. I sent her the link and she will come to join with many of your students will come today.
We miss our students. They were so wonderful.
Okay. Before that, I'll have let Stephanie to test, the videos, no, not video, the presentation files and PowerPoints and everything. All right, Professor Jakapan, Okay.
You have already tested?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Okay.
The
That
sound
doesn't mean
is
it's gonna go
good.
right. Well, hopefully, we hope so.
Do you want to test it again, just to make sure? Maybe test
think-
mine. I only tested
Yes.
yours.
Okay, I will try yours. I can find it. Okay, takes a second.
Great.
Does that work?
Yes.
Yeah, why don't you click it as a slideshow?
Okay. Do you guys have any video clips?
Yeah, that one was just a video. Do you want to go back to that one, Jer, and
Okay.
take a look at that?
Maybe need to test a little
Okay.
bit.
Which one?
The third one, I think it is, or the fourth. The Mike Kittrell image.
This one?
I can't see, you're not sharing the screen.
Oh, sorry.
Right.
I see. Share. Okay.
The one before that, go back one.
Isn't this it?
This is it.
Yeah.
Let's see if it's working. I think it just does that in the beginning.
Is it working? It's working here. You don't see it?
I see it, it's just not smooth. I don't know why it's like going from frame to frame.
Well, it's probably just the connection issue. So because it has to be translated.
Is there any sounds too?
No, this one, there is no audio. I will just describe
I see.
it.
I see. So, okay.
Yeah.
It's like stop motions.
Yeah, it's not really working, but would you go forward to the film of Jaime? It's all the way kind of at the bottom of towards the end.
I can't really jump out of this.
You go to the bottom to go exit slideshow.
Looking for it. I see another casting one.
It's more down. It's after Jaime. It's the Jaime picture.
I see it. Yeah. Okay. All right. And it does not seem to be moving.
It will as a slideshow when it's a slideshow.
Okay, we'll try. Oops, it won't let me open it at that point. Do you want me just to jump forward? Yeah, it doesn't seem to be working. It's not playing.
Is it working?
Right there? Yes. No.
Yeah, let's try again. So that was not working?
It does show, some of the images, it's just slow.
Okay, well, I'll just have to deal with that. I guess I'll just have to do it as stop images. I don't understand why it's not translating. Have you had problems with other videos, or is there any kind of hi Sai?
What about have you ever had the problems, Vilavat?
Video in these Zooms showing films.
No, I haven't seen anything now. Or the last videos that you showed is a little bit of lackings, in stop like a stop motions. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Savanya.
Maybe if I try it,
Cup.
and you can tell me that, that it's not happening, or we have the other, so we can look at the other laptop.
It still does show some of the information. It's just
Okay.
a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it's still understandable.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yes. I think it's okay because it's without audio and you explains what it is. Yeah. And I think people will understand. Yeah. Mm.
So we have about 5 minutes more to
5 minutes to go. So.
Yeah. Savanya is here. Welcome, Savanya.
สวัสดีค่ะสวัสดีอาจารย์วีรวัฒน์ด้วยนะคะ
สวัสดีครับอาจารย์สายครับ
I going to have this afternoon the class in glass art also. This mornings we will have your lecture, and afternoon we will have glass arts class. So we will wrap up what you talked about again in my class, and for next week Yumiko and Osamu will give a lectures during the class. So we will bring your contents into the class and work with this.
Nice.
And I see the participant today, some friends from Malaysia, from Indonesia, also attends the lecture right now. So I think before we beginning, they will come more and more. Yeah. What about the temperature in your in Wisconsin now?
-7.
-7. No, I can't imagine.
But sitting in the hot glass studio is keep you warmer, right?
Good.
That's right. We're very close to the furnace just for this reason.
But today is warm compared to yesterday. Yesterday was really cold.
Yeah.
-13 yesterday.
Oh my God.
It's a big cold for December. I heard you're having some nice weather in Bangkok.
28 Celsius.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yes, and I'm wearing a really beautiful wool scarf that you gave to me.
Okay.
I love it.
Oh, thank you. I remember that.
Keeps me warm.
Oh, I happy that.
Okay, 26 Celsius now. Yeah, maybe 23 in the mornings. Yeah.
That's nice.
We are in the winters, we claims. Yeah.
Yeah.
December is nice.
With 32 in the afternoons.
Wow. Yeah, this is ideal, right? This is the best weather for Thailand. We have a stray kitten that has decided to live in the glass shop. So, so this cat is hiding. She'll only come out when we're not here, but we leave food for her every night.
Ah,
I think she's good luck.
Yeah, maybe she's good luck. Maybe.
We have fewer mice.
everywhere have mice.
Yeah, so a few mice.
I
Everybody,
know, everywhere.
Yeah.
everything comes to the furnace in the wintertime.
It is almost right now 9 p.m. by Wisconsin, right? So
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for
Okay, no
have to be
problem.
late
No problem.
because for ASEAN this is the morning.
We
And
stay up late.
so we have 2 minutes.
Yeah, keep going. 74.
We should have a conversation. Use this computer.
If I'm not wrong, you first come to Thailand 2018, right?
Actually, 17.
17, right.
17.
No,
Ah.
Yeah,
I think he came
17.
in 18.
No, 16 was the election,
Oh,
so
yeah, yeah.
17.
Okay.
It's January of 17.
January of 17.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
That is about 5 years. No?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
5 years next month.
And then we came 2 other times, and then Jeremy came a 3rd time.
Yeah.
or 4th time. Yeah. And we had
So-
tickets to come, but then COVID.
It is 10
COVID
o'clock.
has
So
come.
shall we start? Shall we start?
Right. Okay. I think it's time to start. Yeah. Okay. First of all, yeah. Thank you very much to Jeremy and Stephens to be our guest speaker for today.
Stephanie.
Further details and thanks to Professor Chakapan Vilasini Guns to organize today's events. And later I will let Professor Chakapan to introduce the events. First of all, I want to introduce myself. Yes, my name is Assistant Professor Dr. Virawat Siriwesamat. I'm a Deputy Deans of Research and International Relationships, Faculty of Decorative Arts. I also, I would say, directors, manager of the project of the arcade. Yeah, 2021. It's stand for the symposiums, International Symposium of Art, Craft, and Designs by Silpakon University. The arcade has grew from the events we call the Arcadesas. The Arcadesa is stand for the Art, Craft, and Design International Symposiums on Southeast Asia. That was created by the Indonesia Institute of the Art Yogyakarta and UITM University Technology Malaya in Malaysia, and also Silpakon universities. So we run this kind of the symposiums together for many years. So I think this year is the fifth year. Yeah, and today I want to thank you. Yeah, our audiences. Yes, some maybe come from UITMs. Yeah, I have to thank you to the UITM staff and members. Yeah, to join this talk, and also the EC Jogja members to join this talk. And I think there also the others audience from, I think, from Bandung, from the other institution in Malaysia. Yeah, and certainly I have to thank you our audience from Thailand, from various institutions. Okay. And yes, arcade itself, it's the concept of the arcade. Certainly they have a theme on every year. This year we are facing the situation that globally we are facing now is the pandemics. Yeah. And maybe not just only the pandemics, there are the other global issues that we are occurring now. Yes. And how can I say, the technology transformations, or disruptions in many business, and social issue, political, in different area around the world, and climate change, also the other issues that we also concerns. Yes, therefore the arcade concept is about how we make art together, because during this pandemic we are staying different in our own place, and we lost the connections, like a visiting face to face. Everything become online. So how we will make art together is the concept of the arcade, and we try to find a solution. This is what we are making art together now. Means this is the situation that we are doing. Yeah, this is the solutions, and this will be continue, or this will be changed. Is I would say it's developed. Yeah, and yes. As one theme is about art and craft, it may be not just only the Thailand or Southeast Asia, but the other countries that we are doing in this kind of the disciplines like glass, for example. I appreciate that both of you can come to share with us. So I will hand in this stage to Professor Jakapan Vilasinigul to continue the events. Ajahn Jakapan Chen Krab. Yes.
Thank you, Associate Dr. Wilawat. Good morning, everyone. Here's live from Arcade Symposium, Bangkok. Welcome to the lectures on glass art to celebrate the International Year of Glass 2022, officially declared by the United Nations. The lecture today is organized by Sawanya Chantarasamai, Head of the Glass Studio, Faculty of Painting, Sculpture, and Graphic Arts, Silpakon University, and I, Jakapan Vilasinigul, will be your moderator for today. I would like to thank the Artistic Glass Working Group, Region 16, and the Australian Association of Art of Glass Artists, or you can call AUSGlass, who supports this program and link Southeast Asia to the International Year of Glass and international glass communities, and put this lecture series into the international program. So I would like to mention Doctors Brown Hughes and Peter Nolans from our class who bring me to link to the international, and of course Jeremy Stephanie who also a bridge from us to the house class. I would like to speak a little about International Year of Glass. We have worked together across the world and Asia Pacific and Australia, New Zealand, and Oceania work together under the working group Region 16. If you are interested in program of the Year of Glass, our friends from Malaysia, Indonesia, you can check up into the website of ausglass.org, ausglass.org. Please check up if you are interested in. I believe this year and coming years will be a lot of programs that you can learn and we can share to you to understand why glass is important to our society. I am very pleased to have Jeremy Popelka and Stephanie Trenchard as the first speakers for this lecture series. Jeremy and Stephanie has worked with glass for almost 40 years. Their work has been shown in many major exhibitions and included in collections of many important museums. They have been invited to teach, conduct workshops in many art colleges in the United States and outside. And of course, they have been in Thailand to conduct the workshop and bring hot glass studio, hot glass technique to Thai artists, Thai students. And I think Thailand own from both artists in developing glass art in this country. I am very pleased to have Jeremy and Stephanie as a speaker. I will not talk longer. I believe they have a wonderful presentation. And at the end, we will have a Q&A after the presentation. I give the floor to Jeremy and Stephanie, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Jacopan. It is a great honor to be here from the other side of the world. We appreciate everyone who is attending tonight, some friends and some new faces. And we welcome you to ask questions afterwards. Perhaps if you haven't muted your microphones during our presentation, you might want to do that so we can keep some coherence to it, but it sounds like everyone's pretty quiet right now, which is great.
We really appreciate the opportunity to share our work. We're very proud of our work, and it's very exciting to have such a wonderful audience. And as you said in the opening statement, how we can make art together. What a beautiful thing that is, and how inspiring to think about that. And just us across the world sharing ideas and techniques and inspiration with everyone is a really, really special thing. So we really thank you for including us in this process.
We're going to present this in two parts. I'm going to give my side of it from some of my experiences, both shared with Stephanie and things that I've done on my own. I try to steer my presentation a little bit more to people that don't necessarily have a furnace like this, which is a luxury that we have in our studio. We are in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, United States, which is not very far from Chicago, which is a major city in our country. And it is cold this time of year, so we're quite jealous of everyone else who's in this Zoom call for the most part. So with that, I will start my talk, my slideshow. It's going to take me a second to get this up here. Okay, can you see that? Okay.
Yes, we have seen it.
I put my information in the front page because I think it's really important as a community of people interested in glass that you know that I am accessible either by email or other social media to people who have questions. And so I know some things about glass, but not everything, but I know a lot of people that do know everything. So if you do have some questions, feel free to email me at a later date or contact me in other ways. My name is Jeremy Popelka, and I have worked in glass for 40 years, mainly hot glass. The academic programs in this country often deal with hot glass furnaces that are similar as an industrial type of setup, but at a smaller scale. So we do a lot of glass casting in our studio and glass blowing. Glass casting, sand casting is kind of what we're known for in our community of glass artists in this country, because what we do is a little bit of an old school process. In other words, not a lot of people sandcast anymore. We try to take it to another level. So what we do is we make a special sand that is mixed with bentonite clay and moisture, water, and then we pack molds around it. We pack the sand around the molds and then take the mold out and then pour glass into it. So it's quite similar to some bronze foundry techniques. What you're seeing in there is our studio with our old furnace. Our old furnace lasted 18 years and was something we built. At some point, it became much less practical to keep it running, and so we upgraded to this newer unit that we built with a plan, and it actually recycles the heat. And so when we talked earlier about global warming, I think you have to always think about what you're doing as a human being to add to the catastrophes that are happening and that will happen to the next generation. And so we try our best, but glass is difficult because we do use a lot of carbon fuel, in this case, natural gas. We're going to talk about my work firstly, just to introduce you to my aesthetics and work. Pictured are two pieces I did in the last 7 or 8 years. The piece on the left is gibbous, and the piece on the right is idam. And they have a lot to do with natural effect and natural phenomena. The piece on the left was inspired by the phases of the moon and the phases that we go through in our lives in some ways. And so it's sort of like a calendar. Somehow people that did not have technology, I often look at those histories as inspiration. How did people figure out the universe without all the luxuries that we have in present day society? The piece on the right was actually inspired by some things I read before I went to Thailand about a cave that was discovered in Vietnam very recently. And so I was amazed that this huge cave, one of the largest caves in Vietnam, had never been discovered before, at least by certain people. I'm sure people in Vietnam, some people knew about it, but it was not known nationally. And so that fascinates me that everything has been discovered and yet it has not been. And so that's where the inspiration came from, that piece. I'm also inspired by my local vicinity. And here in Wisconsin, USA, are a lot of fossils. So we live on one of the largest resources of fresh water in the world. It's called the Great Lakes. And this is Lake Michigan. But 500 million years ago, it was an ocean. There was a sea here of salt water, and many coral beds and unusual creatures lived here before there was the lakes, before the glaciers came and the land changed and moved around during the tectonic shifts that the planet's been through. But when you go around the rocks in our neighborhood, you'll see these fossils, quite large fossils that are representational of coral beds. And so I did some pieces, interpreted them in my own way. And on the left, it shows me making an impression into a special sand. And then we pour the glass into that, which is about 1150 centigrade at that point, that we pour the glass from the furnace into the mold. And then it's put into a kiln at about 450 degrees and then cooled down to room temperature. Once it's cooled down, I would remelt this piece into another form And the piece turned out to be this one, which is called Mollusk, which I liked a lot because it went through 3 or 4 phases to get to the final piece. The piece itself is about, I have a ruler here to make sure I say centimeters because I think that's important. It's about 40 centimeters wide, this piece. Another process shot. The rock around here is also affected by history and by this long change in the glacial work that's happened as the ice came down from the north over many, many years. Several times it shaped the surfaces of the local rock and limestone. And so on the left is a picture of a bluff that's quite beautiful, and I'm always inspired by that. So I made a piece with this, another large piece. This one was actually about 60 centimeters tall. This piece that shows the impression in the sand before we actually made the piece. And this was the final piece made in different sections. So I often make sections of glass and then put them together. They fit together in one way or the other. Sometimes they're actually use adhesive or epoxy to put them together. Other times they just stack together like this one. And this one is called Edge. Another piece that I really thought was an important piece for me is Talisman. And I included a picture of what it looked like when it was parts. And so each section of this piece was cast separately before it was put together with a Hextol adhesive, which is a construction grade adhesive that is stronger than the glass itself. It's takes several days to actually cure. So you have to hold the piece together while the glue cures before you can actually move the piece. But this piece is quite heavy. It's about 50 kilos in weight. After going to Thailand, and we'll talk about that a little bit, I was impressed with some of the cultural similarities. Being a bit naive and not really having ever been to Asia, I think I had certain ideas about how things would be or how I would be received and how people would act. And I realized working with my students and with people in everyday life that there was a lot of people wear masks in society. And some masks are caused by governments, some masks are caused by personal trouble, but we all have different masks we wear at different times. So I did a series of masks, and these were done a little bit more of a performance art piece where I would pour glass into a flat mold and then pick up the molten glass and then drape it over a sand mold that was prepared. You can see that kind of face to actually get the final piece. This piece was based on the specimen that was found in the Alps about 20 years ago. That was a frozen human being who died in the Alps and was frozen by a glacier and was preserved for scientists to study and learn about. And I'm sure we had a lot of similarities with him as well. I also want to talk about my blown glass. Many people that go through the academic programs that I've gone through sort of determine that they're going to work in one type of glass making. I've had a hard time giving up glass blowing because I enjoy the process so much. And so I pursued Italian techniques like this one, which is the Marini technique, where we make little elements of glass color that's imported from Germany, in Europe very often, and then they're fused together and then rolled onto a blowpipe and then finally blown out. And all these pieces are relatively small, 10 to 15 centimeters tall. You can kind of see that picture in the bottom. The little tiles have to be preheated and then attached to the pipe to be able to fuse to it. This is a big shift in the presentation. This was sort of a life-changing event. We received an offer to help set up a glass studio at the Bangkok Glass Company, north of Bangkok, which is a bottling factory. And we sent them a proposal and they said yes. And so my wife and I, Stephanie Trenchard, and I went there to work for 8 weeks to try and get the studio functioning and get the people that were going to run it, give them the ability to run it safely. It was in a large factory that produces thousands of glass bottles every day. And so it's running continuously. And they decided that they wanted an art glass factory, an art glass studio, so that they could make one-of-a-kind pieces for different things that were involved with their corporate structure. But they also were open enough to invite artists, mainly from Silpakorn University, to come in and to try it out, to work as maybe as volunteers, maybe as victims. We'll have to see. But it was, we ended up with 8 students. And that first time, I'm going to move real quick here. Something is not shifting. There we go. So we had to get the equipment figured out before we got there. And so the person that helped us design our furnace, John Childs from Hub Glass, built the furnace and built some of the other elements like the glory hole, and then sent them ahead and then installed them the week that we arrived. And so this was in January of 2017. And there were a lot of things that they didn't understand, like that glass furnaces have to be kept on continuously. Usually, I think there were some challenges for us because we do not speak Thai very well. Fortunately, my wife is very conducive to other language, so she did fairly well, but there were many challenges involved with this. But the great thing was that we were dealing with art students. And so art students, I feel, sort of share a common language. And so with art students and art faculty from around the world, so you can talk on certain levels and understand each other. And we did use a lot of dry erase boards and chalk drawings on the ground. So these are some pictures from those 6 weeks. The picture in the bottom right, some of the people that are on this Zoom call are in this picture. But this was a picture the first day we started blowing glass. And the head of the company is in this picture next to Stephanie, and also some of the people involved with the production. And then also many of the students that ended up taking over the studio itself. Another thing about blowing glass in Wisconsin compared to Thailand is the temperature. And so January in Thailand is quite warm. And so you'll see a lot of sweaty pictures of me in the next couple images, because it was usually, sometimes 40 degrees or so in there, sometimes hotter. And so that was pretty intense. After we were finished, there was a few other people that came in that were invited to come in to actually help teach our group, the group that started this studio, how to be artists and how to function in glass. And probably no more important a couple was Osamu and Yumiko, which I wanted to mention as a plug because they will be doing a presentation next week, and I'm sure you want to tune in for that. But in a really small world, but also a very large world, Osamu and Yumiko were graduate students at the university that Stephanie and I were at near Chicago, USA, in the 1980s, in the early 1980s. And so we knew them from many years ago, and we were very excited to know that they were following in our footsteps on this project. Other people that also helped with BG Glass, Peter Bowles and Hiroshi Yamano is a well-known Japanese glass artist. Peter's from Tasmania and would often visit, had a relationship in Thailand to the country, and would come and work with the students quite a bit. And that was a great continuum for the people at Bangkok Glass Studio to work with people with more experience, and really important to get them to where they are today. In the end, there were four individuals that ran the glass studio there, and I just want to talk about them quickly. I'm not going to make a terrible job of saying their full names, but I will call them by their first name. Kabit is also went to Silpakorn, was a wonderful and is a wonderful sculptor in metal, but he has taken on glass and developed a very beautiful style. Titapa is also there and does some wonderful, interesting images about women and women's plight in some ways. Also very emotional work and often related to performance work. And really powerful stuff and things that you might not normally see in the glass factory. Loma Afanaporn is a really brave person who's worked through her technical issues to a point to be a very good glass blower, along with the other three. She does really organic forms, often inspired by nature, and they're lucky to have her. And finally, Ake Rodek Mek is no longer working at BG, but has established himself as quite a sensational glass artist, both as a flame worker and as a person who used the soft glass furnaces work as well. He tried just about every type of glass you could imagine. And he'll still be active in glass, I'm sure, in the future. Finally, this stint at Bangkok Glass allowed us to meet the professor, Jakapan, and be connected to Silpakorn University, which produced all these amazing students. We had visited Silpakorn several times and were really taken by the incredible high level of work that the students were producing and thought it was certainly world-class and as good as any art school we'd ever seen in the world. Later, they did a glass festival, the first I shouldn't say annual, but the first Bangkok Glass Festival, the Thailand Glass Festival. And they brought in many artists from the region and also from the United States, including Nobuyuki Fujiwara, who did some really nice work there. Because of this whole situation, we were lucky enough to kind of start a bit of an exchange, and Araya Banprom and also Sawanya have come to the United States on scholarship to the Corning Museum School and taken classes with our efforts, but also through Silpakorn. And that's been a really great exchange that the Corning Institution has really provided. So I often look at glass, and in this case, I was walking in Bangkok and I noticed this was a type of recycled glass that works as a security barrier to keep people from climbing in. And I think this is the kind of glass I'm interested in sometimes, is how do people use broken glass and other glasses in a way that's functional, but also in a way sort of has a metaphor or a beauty to it. Other things I was look at as a younger student was at archaeological sites. And so the picture on the left are pictures of bottles that were dug up from sites in California, United States, from the 1800s, people, working class people, and what they threw away. And so this was kind of all the remnants of those people that lived there and worked very hard. And then later I was walking in northern Thailand and noticed this pile of bottles, and it reminded me of that and what that sort of represents. I did take some of those bottles and slump them flat. You could see a melted bottle in there, and left it there as a little surprise for the next person who came through to collect bottles. More recently, I wanted to share just something that might be more accessible to some of the viewers, and that's more kiln work glass. So to get another opportunity in Thailand, I approached the Artist Residency Thailand, which is north of Chiang Mai in Mae Rim at the Prem International School. And what that is a interesting residency that is usually provided to philosophers, writers, musicians, many different creative fields to work with the student body at this international school. Alex Soulsby is the founder and artistic director there at the Artist Residency, and he's done an amazing job in recruiting some very spectacular creative people to come and work with the kids. When I went there, I knew I had 3 or 4 weeks, and that's not necessarily a lot of time to actually do a lot of kiln work. So I firstly had to find a resource for glass. And so I asked if there were any window glass companies in the neighborhood of the school, and they knew of one. And so we went and they were very excited to get rid of their broken glass. And so they had barrels of this window glass that they were willing for us to take. They wanted us to take all of it, but we could take one barrel to use in this kiln that's on the left, a very simple ceramic kiln. We also had some different types of glass that we found, including some black glass and some rod that's used in bead making. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. What we did was make some tests. So the first thing we wanted to do was test the kiln and to see how it would melt these different types of glass. And so we made 3 little molds with clay positive, and then filled them with the different types of glass, and then melted it into a solid to see what temperature they melted at. For the most part, plate glass, which is the green glass, is a little bit stiffer than what we normally work with. So it had to be melted around 900 centigrade, maybe, or 750, I mean. And some of the other glasses were a little less. They took a little less time. But in 3 weeks, we didn't have a lot of time to try many different things. So the students, some of the older students, which we know were 16, 17-year-olds, made some tile forms out of ceramic. And then we made plaster molds. These are plaster silica molds, which are 50% plaster and 50% silica flour. You can use silica sand, but it's not as strong as the flour. It's very dangerous to breathe that. So you want to wear some kind of lung protection, some kind of mask when you work with it. But the molds work quite well, but they usually only work with one firing. So we filled all these molds up with the help of some of our assistants, and then melted those to get the results you see. We also had a small kiln that was provided with us that we used continuously. Okay. It was a really engaging student body there. The older students were quite interested in the techniques and also the imagery you could make with the glass. And while some of the younger students were very excited to see the drama, the theater of hot glass. And so we would open the kiln to show the kids what was happening, and they had some wonderful questions. The big part of this residency was to bring other Thai artists to the residency to work and work with the students as well. And that was the big challenge for me, and along with the residency and also the people that came, was to bring some of my friends that we met at Bangkok Glass and Silpakorn University and other places to come up there for a few days and to create glass with this recycled glass. So this is a piece that Kabit did from Bangkok Glass, starting with the ceramic positive, and then filling it with the window glass, and then melting it into the final form you see on the left. Namwan Thanacha was also a student at Silpakorn and a student of ours, and is at Chiang Mai University. I think she's still there. And she decided to use this time with us to make work for her other pieces. This was a piece that she made that was with the leaves on the right, that was actually used in an installation at a radar station that was built by the United States government to detect activity and bombs that were in Laos. And so it was sort of a relic of the Vietnam War, and a very dramatic site where they were doing art installations. So the leaves sort of represented a spirit or something that was past, but the idea was that the radar station could detect sounds so well that if a soldier from Vietnam was walking in the woods, they would hear the sound of a leaf crack, and then they would send a bomb to where that sound came from. Some other pieces that we made with the visiting artists, the visiting Thai artists, just wanted to show you these briefly. There's a fused plate glass piece in the corner by Loma, and then another piece by Kabit. A student piece in the bottom right, and then Namwan did a large scale casting that was an architectural relief piece in the bottom left. All of this would have been very difficult to do without the help of Alex Cheng. Alex Cheng is an international superstar in glass bead making. from Hong Kong originally, lived in Hong Kong, then moved to Canada before, at the end of his career, moved to northern Thailand and started a bead factory and had many people employed and made many, many beads there for different corporations. But he had a lot of glass that he let us use. And so he let us use all this old bead glass. And sometimes you have to find different ways of finding glass in the community. And this was a wonderful resource, and we really are indebted to Alex for all his help. Alex also brought a bead working setup from his factory to the Prem school. And they were able to do bead making while we were there. And one of the visiting artists was Ton Orr, did some beautiful work with us coming from Hua Hin. She also works at Silpakorn University as a professor. This is sort of the thing about glass that I find so amazing, is how when you're young and you see it, it's such a mystery and it kind of stays with you for your whole life. And many of these children, I think, were really impressed. Maybe not the one that's yawning, but many of the students were very impressed by the whole process. And I'm sure some of these kids will end up working in glass in some way later in their life. But glass is about education. It's about community. It's about bringing people together. We also were lucky to have Nilawan from Chiang Mai come up, and she's a specialist in fused glass. Her shop is called Bluebird, and she does a lot of really beautiful fusings using Western glass. Very often, this is a bullseye type glass, which is from the United States, that you can cut and then fuse together in different ways. In this case, she does patterns and different elements in a small kiln. Some more student shots. The students were very engaged there, and many of the students are coming from academic parents and speak several languages. So that part was quite easy to work with them. Many good artists are coming out of that school, and some of them have gone to universities around the world to study art. I wanted to show this because it represents some avenues for the future for people. Partly it's just education. But the kiln in the upper left is a small kiln that you can get and works in most electrical situations. Does not take a lot of power to run it, and you can do some wonderful fusing with a small kiln like that. What else has really changed recently is the establishment of some companies that make small furnaces. So this is a company in Switzerland that makes the right side, upper side is a furnace that will melt glass in small crucibles, maybe 25 kilo, that you can heat glass and use it in similar ways that we use to blow and cast. I also included a picture of Roger Paramore, who is, like many artists in our country, travels from different places and does demonstrations. And it's easy to do that sort of thing when you're a flame worker. And finally, the bottom left is our studio when we bring in high school students to work in our studio to make glass tiles. Educators, people that have influenced me throughout my life, and many, in the beginning of the glass movement in our country, there were many men that kind of ran the programs, but those were the people that really influenced me, including Marvin Lipovsky, who was my graduate faculty advisor, Joel Philip Myers, who was an undergraduate program head, Erwin Eisch, who's from the traditional factory design community in Europe, an amazing artist. That what really happened, I think, when glass started to become a big thing in our country, a lot of factories in Europe gave some of their designers the freedom to make artwork. And Erwin was one of those people that made very individual pieces, unique pieces during his lunch hour or arranged times outside of the regular factory schedule. And that freedom made some beautiful work that led to people like Dale Chihuly on the bottom right, who was someone that was very accessible for us as students. And he's a very well-known glass artist around the world, but he set up schools like Pilchuck Glass School that I taught at later that really has brought people from everywhere around the world together in one place to learn together about glass making. Finally, before Stephanie talks, I just want to talk a little bit about community and what glass is. Glass is considered an amorphic solid, which means it's a very unusual material in that it acts like a molten material once it's cold. And I think that is a good metaphor for our community, in that we are open. We're always moving, even though we're sitting still, we're always moving together as one community towards a bigger goal. And that can be art, but it can also be discovery and to learn about other people. And I want to thank the Old Glass for helping to organize this, the Region 16 committee, including Bronwyn Hughes and Peter Nolan, who have been so wonderful getting the International Year of Glass organized in the Region 16. Professor Jacopon and people that we've not mentioned, I thank all of you for everything. And we're going to give this to Stephanie now. Thank you.
Little transition here. We're sharing the same computer. Okay, so share screen and desktop, right? And sorry, it's just going to take me a minute to. Okay. Okay. Well, wow, that was great. Thanks, Jer. That was really wonderful. It was really amazing to see his whole body of work. You know, you work right next to somebody day in and day out, but it's so impressive when you see the whole body of work together. And it's also amazing how, you know, as you'll see with my work, two people can share a life together, share a studio, share everything, and yet their bodies of work could be so completely different. And that's pretty exciting. So, you know, Jeremy is pretty much the reason that I'm in glass. I was a painting major in undergraduate. I tried glass blowing for 2 semesters, and I thought it was just kind of a little bit ridiculous, a little too hot and too much process. So I stepped away from it and continued painting, and I did textile design for 12 years. And then when we moved to Wisconsin and we built our studio, which in this photograph is at its messiest point, then that is when I started working with glass. I had been, as I said, I had been doing textile design. And so I'd been working on a series of fall patterns with fruit and fruit, pears, apples, birds. And Jeremy had just built the glass studio. We had just moved here and built it. And he said, you need to make something, because I can't be the only artist that runs this facility. And plus he's just a natural teacher. He's a natural sharer. So I said, well, why don't I make some fruit? And this was early on the type of work that I made. And I have a short film, and, you know, we tried earlier. Technically this film is a little choppy, and I apologize for that. I'm not really sure why it's not quite working. So I'll talk you through it, but I think you can still get the idea from each of the individual images. So this is the piece that is made in the course of the film. I just want to kind of show you my my process, my technique. So it starts out with sculpting the interior object, which is a figure, and that says 2050 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 1250 Celsius, I think. Just double checking Jeremy on that. So you can see he's starting to sculpt the figure, and it's based on this woman artist from I'm sorry, that's okay. So you can see we're getting all the details. Earlier, I wasn't talking about, that was a drawing that I had done based on the old photograph. And so in this image, you can see we're attaching the different colors, the different color glass, hot bits to make the details. And she had this really kind of 1920s period or 30s clothing, and I really wanted to capture that. So this is the process of sculpting the figure. This was one piece that Jeremy helped me with the basics. As you know, glass is often a team effort, and so frequently I utilize Jeremy and our assistant Chelsea, and I'll talk about her a little later, but he's on the stick on this part right now. So that's the figure after it's been puntied, and now you can see I'm making some adjustments just to get it, just the posture just right. I find with sculpting biography, the posture is really important. Now you can see her next to the drawing there. And then this is the next step of it. After the figure is cool, I paint it with glass enamels. And so that is a special kind of paint that can withstand very high fire. It can withstand the molten glass on it. And the colors are not exactly true. They end up changing a little bit. So I've become accustomed to how they will act. This design that I'm doing on the body of the figure is based on the paintings by this woman. This was a piece to honor a woman named Jessie Chase, who was a woman artist here in Wisconsin. She died in 1972, so that's one of her paintings there. I never got to meet her, but we don't have a lot of history of women artists in Wisconsin, especially in the whole country and probably in the whole world. There are women artists, but they don't really get the recognition they deserve. This is the casting, the mold. So that's a sand mold. I create a series of stencils that I cut out with paper in order to make a pattern for the background. So that's frit, and you can just sprinkle it into the impression in the sand. And you can see I have all the different colors. So then when I remove the stencils, I have this really nice glass pattern in the background. I will be able to pour glass into this mold that will fuse to this glass in the background, which you'll see in just a minute. So the sand is actually from Norway, and it's been sifted with bentonite. And there we are pouring a first ladle of glass into the mold. This one, I think, took 3 pours. The glass is about 1200 Celsius. There's the figure. She's at about 500 Celsius. So that's the hot figure that's in the kiln. The enamel paint has been fired on. So you can see I just push her into the sand. I'm not sure what your film is doing, but I hope you can kind of see it. And there it is afterwards when we pour the glass onto it. And you can see that she doesn't move around. The figure doesn't move around. It just stays in place. And then we'll trim. You can see the smoking glove because that's hot. And then I'll torch the figure and the surface of the piece in order to get it level and to bring any bubbles to the surface. And that takes about maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes before I have to put it in the kiln. So it goes back in the kiln where it anneals for up to 5 to 7 days, ramping down very slowly. The piece is then dug out of the sand. Usually I wear gloves, but this one I wasn't wearing gloves for this film. There's our dog. And we pull it out of the sand, and then it takes a little polishing and cleaning up. But you can see the pattern on the back. You see that through from the front. That's reminiscent of one of her paintings. And this piece was donated to a museum for a fundraiser for a local place in town. So basically, once I discovered the enamel paint, my whole relationship with glass changed. And I realized that I could make it my own. I didn't have to be a glass blower. I could still be a painter and work with glass, work 3D sculpturally, but still make it painting. The paint is, this particular paint was developed by David Hopper out of California. He no longer produces it, so I had to buy up a lot before he stopped making it. And now I've been experimenting with other types. There is a type called Ruche that's very good. It comes in a powder form and you have to mix it yourself. They have high fire, which is what this paint is. It fires at about 1200, but they also have low fire, which fires as low as, I think probably like 550 Celsius. So you can paint on things that are already blown and just fire it on. But this is the high fire. This is a piece that I did based on some women artists from the Soviet Union. Some of them even are listed as anonymous. It's been my focus of working with art history, kind of rethinking the canon, thinking about women from art history who were often overlooked. I think now internationally, I think it's getting more notice, and that's pretty exciting. But it's something I've been thinking about for a long time. Here's a taller stacked piece of mine, and Jeremy was smart to get this ruler here. So I would say this was probably about 105 centimeters. So it's a tall stacked piece. You can see the front and the back. The back has the stencil powders that I create the pattern with, so you can kind of see that through from the front as well. So it is a two-sided piece, but it's definitely kind of on that line between sculpture and painting, because it's not, you know, it kind of straddles both genres. Here are some storytelling pieces I did about people from art history. The Wedding Vortex is a piece that I did that is about marriage and about my feeling that people have to change in order to be together, and it's a vortex, and sometimes one is upside down and the other is you know, right ways up, and then it swirls around. So I thought that was kind of an interesting commentary. The middle one is about women artists, particularly the writer Virginia Woolf, looking at her sister who was a painter, and you know, thinking about the decision to have children or be an artist without children. I think as a woman artist, this is a huge issue for women, because you know, raising children while making art is extremely challenging, because both things demand 100% of your attention, and it's extremely, you know, you can't just be an artist 9 to 5. It's not really possible. So so I found that a challenge myself. We have 2 children. Now they're adults now, so we made it, we did it. But that definitely was on my mind as I was a younger artist getting started and thinking about content in my work. The one on the right is all about talking about the wife of Rene Magritte. And I will admit most of my references are European. It's kind of interesting. That's been my focus, and probably need to broaden my scope a little bit. This is a piece that I did called Little Red Riding Hood, and I really am interested in folklore and myth, and how those stories relate to our lives. This I made when my daughter was leaving for college, and this is a Western folk story about, maybe there's a version of it in Thai, but about a little girl, a vulnerable little girl and a big bad wolf, and not being able to trust reality. This is a fairly recent piece that I've just finished, and these are each about 61 centimeters tall. No, I'm sorry, that's not true. They're 40 centimeters tall. So they're fairly substantial pieces. They're breaking the surface. They're emerging on the front and the back. They're barely contained within the casting. And I think that's it's called Women on the Precipice. And it's about this kind of this Me Too movement and pushing the boundaries and kind of stepping out and being heard. This is a piece I did a couple of years ago called Tertiary Colors. And this is, again, another historic piece about women artists, American women artists, Alice Neal, Florine Sedemeier, and Elaine de Kooning. I was going to pair each woman with something, the bottom part of the sculpture with some material culture from their biographical information. I usually look at old photographs when I want to get information about a subject and look at their home and their life. And I was looking for chairs out of their studios. And then I realized each one had done a seated self-portrait, which is a little bit unusual. So I took that as a divine coincidence and proceeded to make each one with a seated self-portrait. You know, Frida Kahlo is a very famous American artist, and I've done a couple pieces about her. She has already a lot of acclaim, and so I don't really feel like I need to bring her to attention, but she's very popular, and it's I like to work on her work as well. This is another artist named Paula Modersohn-Becker, and she was German, and she died, I think, in 1908. And this is this painting is of hers that I have on the screen, and it's a nude, and that was done in 1907. And I'm just so struck by the quality of that painting and how naturalistic it is. If you think about the other European paintings that were happening at that time, like the Impressionists and the Post-Impressionists, you think of Renoir and how idealized their images of women were at that time. And this one is so realistic and so natural that I was really struck. So I did a piece about her. It's got, you know, versions of her self-portrait. I've got a figure of her in period, the dress of her period. The back of the piece has a giant eye, and that's a visual for seeing her, for saying, you know, I see you in history. You're not forgotten. Your work is important, and I think this is important to me. This is a brand new piece that I just finished recently. This one is too. This is about Suzanne Valadon, and she was a model for a lot of the Impressionist painters, Degas and specifically Toulouse-Lautrec. And she learned to paint from them, although they always said, well, women can't really be painters. But that is a painting of hers that I have in the upper corner, and she's a wonderful painter. So I replicated her painting and put her into a pairing. I've been working on a lot of poetry and language in my work, and trying to find some surrealistic imagery with words and dreams, and working on images in that sense. And this is a pairing. This is two individual pieces that have a relationship. Relationships are important to me. I think about them a lot. You know, I work with my husband, and I have an assistant, and there's a lot of conversation and a lot of activity. It's very social for the way that I approach work and the way that Glass is. And I think that's reflected in my work. This is sort of a kinetic piece because the background has this figure, these two profiles, and you can, it's modular. You can change it so that they're facing each other or so they're not facing each other. But when they're not facing each other, they become one head. And I thought that was kind of a very interesting metaphor for, togetherness. Speaking of togetherness, this is a piece that Jeremy helped me with. We collaborated a little bit on this piece. You'll notice the texture on the sides. That is something that he added to this piece. I sculpted the figure inside and built the story, but I invited him to help me and join me. And actually, he's going to do it again on a piece we're going to cast tomorrow, coincidentally. So, I frequently work in partnership with him. I have this picture of Jeremy here. I'm going to talk a little bit about collaborating, and we don't really call our work collaborative, but we do work together on pieces all the time. And this is a piece that he sculpted. You can see the figure in the middle. It's a figure of Alice Neal as a mother. And then you can see on the left, he's got her on the blowpipe. She's totally clear, so I totally covered her with paint. That's when I had a lot of paint before I would supplement with frit later on. So this is an older 2010. You can see Jeremy in there working on that piece. This is our wonderful kick-ass assistant, Chelsea Littman, and we're gonna try to get her to visit Thailand someday. She's been a fantastic assistant and helpful mate in the studio, good energy. We met her at Corning Museum of Glass. That's this picture right here. And that's Kanami behind her. That's a Japanese artist who also does really wonderful cast work. We were teaching at Corning and Chelsea took our class. And after the class, we said, well, why don't you come to Wisconsin someday and work for us? And so she did. So she's been here for over 4 years, and that's been wonderful. Beth Littman is another artist that we collaborate and work with quite often. We were very lucky to have her in our state. She's from the East Coast, but moved to Wisconsin about 10 years ago, and frequently comes up and uses us in our studio to make components for her own work. And she's been a great mentor to me. I've learned so much from her about sculpting and working with glass. Her ease with the material is something that I had never experienced before. I think that's one thing, everybody has a different relationship to the material, and the more people you work with, that you experience how they work with the different types of glass. The stray cat is running across the room right now. Jer. Anyway, and here is me in Thailand. There's ice cream doing a casting, and the thing about teaching, she's over there. The thing about experiencing all the different people, ice cream is not really a glass artist. Maybe she is now, but she was just starting at BG as an assistant, and she got to make a casting, and she made a really delightful piece. And it's just, the whole experience of listening to people tell their stories about their work it opens it up for everyone, and it builds on itself, and it's such a wonderful thing. And I think that's something that women in glass, they bring to it, because women are a little bit more natural storytellers and communicators. I know that's a stereotype, but it's a tendency, I would say. And that process of communication and exploration and sharing is so rich, and that's really a big part of what my work's about. And that's what my experience in other studios. And then here I am in the studio. We were working with some enamels, just painting on things that we had blown. You can see a couple of them in the background. And this is a way, we were talking at some point about, if you don't have a furnace, what can you do? Well, you can work with these enamels and fuse them onto the glass, and you can fuse them on and then paint again and then refuse it, bring it back up, and keep developing layers. There are a lot of opportunities within that. So this is, I'm sorry if there's noise. This is a process of making a blown figure that we had a visiting artist, Jaime Guerrero, come, and we did this blown figure. So this is the this is the low fire paint that I have put onto this blown figure. And so it's kind of helps that you're seeing somewhat of a film, but it's pretty exciting. This is the piece that we made in that last little video or stop action movie. So you can see that this piece has been sculpted. And again, this is about 40 centimeters tall. It's been sculpted. Jaime Guerrero, who's a wonderful glass blower and sculptor. He was a student of Jeremy's at California College of the Arts back in the 90s. And we invited him to come to our studio and do a residency here. So he came last spring because he wanted to learn all my painting techniques. And so he was willing to share his blowing and sculpting process with me. So together we all had a great time. We made all kinds of work. And this was a piece that I made with his help. I was able to sculpt the face from the inside out and then sculpt the bust. And then as you saw in the little short film, we fired them in the kiln and then put them together on the blowpipe. It was very exciting. And this piece is in the Museum of Wisconsin Art. I'm very proud of it. I'm hoping to make some more. He's coming back in January. So if you ever have a chance to invite him to anything, he's got wonderful skills and wonderful talent. And I can, any good artist that you bring to your studio benefits the whole studio. Here, I'm also a painter, so I want to make sure to mention that. So this is a snapshot of some of my paintings. I do a lot of abstract. I like to focus on the luminosity. And so I think because I work with glass, it's a parallel way of looking at surface. And so I'm always trying to explore with light and color and shape and form. I know they do, at first glance, they do seem very different from my glass, but then the more you understand my connection to the color, the light, the form, begins to see a parallel with the two mediums. And then I also wanted to just kind of briefly, we talked about what you can do without a furnace. So I've been making these tiles. This is frit, and you can do this with slumping. We did this with hot glass. So on the left, you see I have cut out my stencils with Bristol paper, make a plan, and then I use the frits and the powders. This is just a very slow, hopefully you can see it, just pouring the hot glass into the mold. And then it ends up looking something like this. So this is something that can be done, without a furnace. You'd have to do the fusing part of it. And then this is my last image. I don't know, Jared, do you want to come back? But this is just us working in our studio, which we continue to do every day. We're 25 years in our town, working in our studio every day, working on different projects with different people. It's a very exciting way to have a studio. So now maybe I should stop sharing my screen, correct? And did we want to maybe Jeremy has a closing remark? And do we want to open it up to any questions as well?
Thank you for wonderful presentation, Jeremy, Stephanie. Your metaphor, Jeremy, for melting glass as our society that we have to form together. We can form our society together like a melting glass. And I really impressed with Stephanie's presentations about how you can use the glass as a media to speak about the role of the female on the creative side. And all together, I think this will be inspired for Southeast Asia to work forward in terms of using glass as a medium. I think I not going to wrap up more what you have very clear from your presentation. I open this floor for our participant to ask question. I believe that there is a lot of interesting in concept, in process, in technique and opportunity, and even how glass and society community can glass can play the role of this kind of activity. Allow me to speak a little in Thai. Perhaps my student have a question in Thai, so I can translate for them. สำหรับนักศึกษาที่อยากจะถามนะครับไม่ต้องกลัวนะครับตั้งคำถามได้เดี๋ยวครูแปลให้ครับ I welcome friends from Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, Australia. If you have question, please. Is there any question, please?
I think your point about, the melting glass brings the community together. I think glass is really a way to invite everyone into the conversation. It is such a beautiful, like enticing medium that everybody is curious about and interested. And I think just for that reason alone, it's challenging, but I think for that reason alone, it's kind of a universal medium.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed with what's happening in Asian countries. Also, of course, Australia has a long history, in New Zealand as well. But I feel like the future really lies with some of these places that maybe have new ideas of working with different materials from their culture and also from their artistic heritage. And so they're applying some of those ideas onto the medium in a fresh way. And I think our country is very interested in interacting with different people. As the Corning Glass Museum and its scholarships, they've always tried to bring in people from other places to give them opportunity, but we know that we benefit as much by interacting with new ideas. Because if you have a very long history, things get stale, things get old. And when new people use a material for the first time, they have good ideas that we can't see. They're too obvious to see sometimes. And so I think that's where the future lies, in places like Silpakorn University and some of the other people that are watching right now. Is the future is with you and your ideas. And so know that the community is there for you to access. And there are many people that want to talk to you and help you in your voyage in glass.
Perhaps I can ask some questions. You experience about Thailand. Do you think this is opportunity to doing glass art as the medium? How can we use the local material? I think the situation is similar from Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia. It is opportunities to use local material to set a studio, a glass studio for practicing art.
Well, I think there's lots of precedent for that. There are studios in different countries in this hemisphere that have used recycled glass with the addition of certain chemistry to actually blow glass. You don't necessarily have to import glass from the West to do it themselves. Places like Afghanistan and have a long history of blowing glass with very crude, very basic furnaces that are only running for a short period of time. There's a direct link with some of those studios to the original glass blowing that happened 2,000 years ago, and that you don't need a very complicated furnace necessarily to do that. And some of that ingenuity that happens on the local level is there. At the same time, there's a lot of times there's a disconnect sometimes between industry and the artist. And I think you're experiencing that a little bit with some of the factories near Silpakorn where they made glass and they have lots of glass. They may be closing now and they have resources that they would like to see them used. So often things end up in the garbage or in the landfill that could be used as for artists. And so I think that people, when they have a lot of need to make things, they try to find things for free, for very cheap. And often industry offers those products. But you're still working with some of the factories in Thailand, correct?
Yes, I am. I think that is an opportunity. I think this, if we see on the handicraft industrial, I think we still have handicraft industrial in glass left, and even though is collapsed one by one, but still resources from this factory, from these companies still left for recycling into the art studio. I think the situation may be similar to from our friend in Malaysia and Indonesia. Please, if anyone have a question, please don't be hesitate to ask your question.
It's not easy.
Okay, Jeremy and Stephanie, I have one questions. I would say I'm quite new about this material and techniques, so I have some maybe basic curiosities. Yeah, as I understood that the glass basically is a very huge industry. Yeah, even in Thailand or like Bangkok Glass. Yeah. Is there any local or I don't know the other material or raw material that we can use to make a glass, or even a recycled glass that you also mentioned?
Yes, I mean, there's ways of taking regular bottles that are thrown away and adding chemistry. My studio in California, we would go to a factory and fill up barrels of their glass that they would throw away, that they had to empty their furnaces once in a while. And Marvin Lipovsky, who ran the program, devised, you would add 10 chemicals and oxide, soda ash, limestone, things to it, more like more small elements. And it would work, and you could blow it and pour it and make cast with it. And he did it because the university didn't have the money, to fund some of the raw material. And so it's very expensive to buy special glass that you can use as an artist. But if you can create it yourself, like you're saying, the price is much less. But it is complicated. You have to experiment. You have to use many different chemicals to get the glass quality correct. So there's some practice, there's some failure before there is success. But there are ways of doing it. There are definitely ways of doing it. So, and that is available. I can send you the chemicals and the minerals and the different materials that are involved. But also just remelting glass. You can, we use the window glass. Those sort of resources are so common that every community has those in some regard. And so you can start with things like that, and kind of like what is being devised in places around the world is just using found glass.
And you can use paint on the found glass. You could use sandblasting. You can do fusing and slumping. You can So there are lots of things you can do with plate glass, window glass.
And I know that there's a lot of success at Silpakorn with some of the projects that the students and the faculty have done are incredible. So
Yeah, amazing.
yeah, hopefully you'll do a program, Sawanya and Jacopan at some point to share with the community about those projects, because I know there's some great movies online, but I think that's what you're doing is pretty spectacular.
Okay, has another questions from
Yeah.
from friends, our friends. Yeah, Mr.
I
Agus Suwanda. Yeah, have dropped questions in the chat box. Yeah, Agus Suwanda from Indonesia. Yes, I have a little glass studios. I am using a recycled glass like a window glass for materials, but in my glass always a lot of small bubbles. How long does it take to cook glass to make a bubble disappear? Thanks. Yes, questions from Indonesia.
Yes, and
Good
that's a good question.
Yeah.
We had many bubbles in our glass for many years. We had to have a hotter glass to get fewer bubbles. So that was part of the problem, was we couldn't get the temperature. Some glasses like window glass just by themselves are very difficult to remelt and use in a way for maybe her application or their applications. But I would like to see some pictures of the things they're making, and we can talk about it. But bubbles are sort of that thing that has been throughout the history of glass making, is always the little bubbles. And people always talk about that and how they're made and how the glass is created. But window glass in a furnace is difficult to work with. You need very high temperature. And usually it's a problem. It's usually a question of temperature.
But we talk about bubbles in our studio pretty much every day, one way or the other.
Yes.
Okay. We have friends from different university asking in Thai, so I translate.
Yeah.
She would like to know if it's possible to if you can explain a little between sand casting mold and plaster silica mold. What is the difference? What are the difference between sand casting mold and plaster silica mold?
Well, the sand cast mold is an open face mold. And if you use the plaster silica, you can do a enclosed mold, and you can explain what the difference.
Usually a plaster silica for glass casting is done within a kiln. And so like you've done at the university, you cannot pour into plaster silica from a furnace without a mold that is warm. And so if you pour glass into a cold plaster silica mold, you'll get many, many bubbles, and it doesn't work. You have to heat that mold up to about 500 Celsius before you can pour glass into it. I used to make molds and then fire them and then drop chunks of glass in them warm in a kiln. And that worked very well to get good quality looking objects. But sand casting is just opened, done in the air, room temperature, except you're pouring the hot glass into it. It's a completely different thing. Plaster silica is much more accessible to most people because all you really need are the materials and the kiln itself. You don't need a big furnace to actually do that type of work.
So we have the other questions like how we can combine glass and ceramic.
Okay, this question is from Ertas, a Chinese student. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Wonderful work from China. Incredible things, really good things happening in China in glass right now. So ceramic and glass are very different in terms of how they cool, especially. Usually it's an issue of how things cool and interact. And if something shrinks at a different rate as it cools, it is very difficult to make them compatible. Over the course of my career, I often tell students that it won't work, but go ahead and try, because maybe you will discover something. And so I have seen people at the university in California use porcelain with success by putting many layers of kiln wash on the ceramic. So you have to layer it on, and it's almost like putting plaster on the ceramic. So there's a layer between the glass and the ceramic. And that allows the glass to shrink without cracking. But it is very difficult. It has to be sort of a simple form for it to work. But I just say to you in English, try it, and maybe you'll get lucky. But it is very difficult to get that to work. That is a question we have very often. And sometimes I think it's best to use glass separately from the ceramic, and then to actually put them together cold.
Right. Thank you, Jeremy.
you.
Okay. Another questions from Mahisan Hijas. Yes. I'm not sure, it's maybe from Malaysia. Yes. Hi there, such a wonderful glass work. I have a questions. I combine kiln glass and other materials in my work. For example, recycled materials. Will that make the work less pure? And how does glass sustain the change of techniques and contribute towards sustainability in life? Thanks.
I think that's a good question and a challenge for people that work in glass sometimes. For you, if I understand your question, when you say less pure, it means either technically you're talking about combining recycled glass with other types of glass, and maybe that's what you're talking about, pure, or you're talking about the artistic concept of what pure is. And as far as that goes, you have the freedom to try different things. Glass is this sort of idea of purity and beauty. And sometimes that is not the best thing as an artist, to have something that has this weight, that it's beautiful all the time. Because how do you become an individual artist working with something that everyone thinks is beautiful? It makes you as an individual less, because people are looking at the glass as glass and not as you as an artist. So there's two ways of looking at it. You could say pure about mixing glasses, and that's very difficult, but also maybe it's more pure if you make things a little rough or a little personal. And maybe Stephanie can talk about how glass sustain the change.
Yeah, I think when I talked about Beth Lipman coming, she was making something on the rod. It fell off. She just reached over, put it back on the rod, and didn't think about it again. And that is a freedom from purity that really allows for more creative process to happen. And that was life-changing for me to see that, because glass can be very strict, you know, about pure, and, you know, like everything has to be, you know, just all the rules that we know about glass. And every time you break those rules, you open the door for opportunity.
I think the question, my sons have two questions. The other is, in the future, how can we work glass technique with sustainability? Also a challenging question.
Yeah.
Yes. I think there are encouraging signs in the West of people using different techniques. Biofuel is now being used in glass studios. So if you're familiar with that, you're using oil that often comes from restaurants or different industrial resources, and burning that to actually fire your furnaces. and that's happening much more common these days. There are Facebook groups that are dedicated to sustainability in glass. I would like to send you some follow-up information to some of these things if possible. So if you send me your email now or a link, I will get back to you. You can also look me up on Facebook and ask me questions that way. But many of these questions would be nice to follow up with some real information that I would have to give later. So please send me your contact information and I will get back to you with answers as well.
And we rebuilt our furnace, and it's supposed to be saving 30% energy from our last furnace. We're still using natural gas, but it's a little bit better. We have a consciousness, awareness of that.
There are many more electric furnaces, and so it's difficult to have enough solar power or wind power to actually have a furnace that is melting glass. But things are changing slowly. Eventually, things will have to change. Like natural gas and different types of fuel is getting much more expensive right now. The glass industry in Italy is in big trouble because their bill for fuel is 4 times higher this year. And so they can't really figure out how to keep the furnace going in some ways. So is when things get very hard and difficult, sometimes people invent answers. They come up with an answer. So some things have not been so challenging to many people in this country, but now it is getting more challenging. And I think because of that, people will come up with some good ideas, but it may be many years away.
A question from participants, Sherry. I don't know where she's from.
Sherry from Singapore. Yes.
From Singapore. Okay.
Yes.
What kind of material is the best for combined with glass?
Well, Jeremy uses copper sometimes. That seems to be the best compatibility as far as another material. I use
soft metal works. So if you're actually trying to do something hot, it has to be soft enough to change as the glass cools usually. But I think it's worth experimenting to try different things. For us personally, we like to work with metal and glass, and many artists in this country like to work with steel and metal. But sometimes we work with wood, and sometimes we work with different materials, but we let them cool down before we put them together. So it's kind of, you have to plan how to put things together later. Glass is so technically oriented sometimes that it becomes something you have to really plan every part so that it will go together later.
The other question from Indonesia, from Yogyakarta, our friend asked Stephanie directly, which work of yours is the most memorable for you?
I have to say that I always say that my favorite piece is whatever I'm working on at the time, because I really love the process. The process is the most important part. I am making a piece tomorrow. I'm casting it, and it's going to be a portrait of an artist named Marisol. And she has crazy forms, and I sculpted them last week. So that right now is my most favorite piece because I'm in the process. I think the activity of making artwork is more important to me than the final product many times. So yeah, that's kind of a, sorry if that's not the answer that they're looking for, but.
I think as artists, you're often kind of working on the next piece, and it's difficult to look back sometimes, but I think they're like children that go out in the world, and sometimes you don't see them for a long time or never again. So it's you kind of, what are you working on? What are you intimate with in the studio right now?
Is there any question more? มีคำถามเพิ่มขึ้นไหมครับ
I it's so wonderful to get all these questions from all over the world. It's really exciting.
If there are not any question, I give Jeremy and Stephanie the last word. What do you think we can do next year? Oh, there's okay. If there any possibility that we can do, I suppose next year the COVID will not gone. So through online and through this platform, is there any possibility that we can work probably more practicing, more action across the Pacific Ocean?
I think so. I mean, I think there's lots of people. One thing that's good about these type of Zoom calls is that you talk to people that you would never have an opportunity to talk to. So everybody uses YouTube and other things to find out information. And so that's there, but I think there will be more opportunities to do live demonstrations. Like we could do a sandcasting session with students, or do an interaction of kiln work where you meet for 2 hours a week and talk about projects and see pictures. But it's never easy because it's hard when you're so far apart, different equipment. But people take different types of writing classes right now in this country, music, creative art. I think that's where we're headed a little bit until COVID becomes less severe.
I think we could probably do a casting class over Zoom because if everyone had the right equipment that they needed. I think that's a little easier than a glass blowing class because that is so hands-on, but the casting is a little bit easier to just show someone, and then it's not quite as nuanced as blowing.
I think it would be really neat to have a solving, like for figuring out bubbles, and actually talking to people live and to see their furnace or to see how they're melting glass and talking to them directly to figure out problems, I think would be very interesting. And even like a critique where you talk about work, I think would be helpful as a way to give us new ideas.
So please, Stephanie, please go ahead.
No, also just, like he was saying, for critique, to have a prompt and then take some time and then come back together, all responding to a specific prompt within a parameter of technique. I think that would be very doable and very interesting, and we'd all learn something from it.
As you mentioned, Jeremy's mentioned before, I and Savanya did research, and using recycled glass, I can share this through this platform, and we will work with our friends from Southeast Asia, probably from more than Southeast Asia. If we have, we can draw interest from friends from China, from Japan, whatever, and we can bring together the workshop on glass. I really convinced that our friends from Malaysia and Indonesia has kiln in the university. So perhaps we can, I, Savanya, and many professors in Silapakon can work behind the scene after this workshop. We wrap up together and set up some project about glass, and we can invite you back for comment and give the idea, or be a mentor, or part of the sharings across the Pacific. I believe there will be something more exciting and more action in coming years. For, as I say, this is a forerunning program to draw the idea. I think what you present today is very sparking, very inspiring us. And on behalf of the audience, I would like to thank the platforms, the Arcade Symposium in Art, Decorative and Craft in Southeast Asia. I thank every attendance, participant, and last but not least, Jeremy, Stephanie, our first speakers, and for the beautiful presentation and sparkling, inspiring idea for today. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice to see everybody. This was
We hope
wonderful.
everyone stays healthy. And
Yes.
Okay.
And-
Professor Chakapan, can I have a last? Yeah. Maybe can you promote the next week's events? Yeah.
Sure. I'm
Right.
going to speak about that. As I mentioned, that we going to have the programs next year, but before next year, this year is not going to end. Next week's Thursday afternoon, we will see Yumiko Noda, Osamu Noda, and she will live from her studio. And I spoil a little that for the audience that she will demonstrate from her studio. So you will not only listen, and you can see how the artist actually work in the studio, in the hot glass studio.
Wow.
So, and some point of Jeremy, Stephanie, as mentioned today, is that working with children, working with community, we will see the other aspect, how artists use local material in terms of serving the environment, serving the culture, and serving the community, and bring all these practice to high level of artistic and high level of the supporting community. I would like to encourage everyone to come back to attend the lecture with the Nijima Glass Art next week. Thank you, Professor Vilavat.
Yes. Mr. Osamu and Mr. Yumiko also here, but they still keep silence, waiting for the next week's is their turns. Yeah. Please stay
Don't miss
tuned. Yeah.
they're good.
Or maybe Osamu, you can drop some greetings. Yeah, to us. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see you. Yeah, next week soon.
See you.
Good. Nice to see.
Thank you.
Thank you, Osamu. Thank you, Yumiko. Thank you very much, Jeremy and Stephanie Popelka, for today a great lecturers, a great contributions. Yeah,
Appreciate it.
for us. Yeah, and
Hope
I
to
think
see
we
you.
are yeah.
So I'll see you in the next week. See you in the
Okay. End of the programs
See
now.
you
Yeah.
next
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your all of your participations.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Thank
Malaysia,
you.
thank you.
From Yogya and UITM, we will discuss later. Yeah. Okay. Even Bandung. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay, I will stay to send all of you. Yeah.
もういいのかな？
いいんじゃない？誰かが映ってる。
まだ。
終わり。
OK。
Okay.
なんかあの人が出てくる。
決勝で。これ、提出で終わるんでしょ？
退出すればいい。退出する。
提出でね、退出。クロームって何？
เคนะครับ yes okay I think I end of the wait a minute ครับผมอาจารย์ครับประสบความสำเร็จนะครับเดี๋ยวแป๊บหนึ่งเดี๋ยวผม end of meeting แป๊บหนึ่งนะครับเดี๋ยวเราสักครู่นะฮะผมก็นึกว่ารอส่งแต่เข้าใจว่ามีคนค้างนะฮะแต่เดี๋ยวผมปิดโปรแกรมโอเค bye bye yes end of the meeting for all